So we want to look at how we can go back and balance the laws. And what we're seeing is the amount of frustration that's been ongoing. It hasn't stopped. We're seeing it heightened now, only because of the global change that we're seeing as we enter into the new world.
In the new day and age, a lot of, as we're nationalizing, as we're seeing multimedia, you can reach out now on your laptop and reach somebody in Egypt with the press of a button. Yeah. You're seeing the information highway being expanded like never before. So we're able to communicate, and with that communication comes the need to implement change, both from an internal standpoint and an external standpoint. Internal being that the people who we are representative of our community are staying together and are communicating when there's issues in the communities. These issues are issues of community policing, criminal justice reform. All of these things have to change as we are going, and we're talking to our brothers in Africa and Egypt and Asia. The changes that we're seeing across the board globally have to trickle back down into our country. Yes. And that's why we're seeing the level of frustration. That's why we're seeing the amount of change that's necessary. It has to come. It's time.
Well, you know, for me, I just, when I think about what has happened, particularly with this situation with this young man, and when we talk about change, my mind goes directly to change from here down, not here up.
That's right.
That's how I see it, because there's so much, you know, when you look at a situation where this kid was a ward of the state and was able to, family was able to receive money. Now, I'm still trying to get past that, trying to understand that, because he being a ward of the state, he was a ward of the state all of his life, this young kid, and it's really sad. You know, there was, as Scott talked about, when he talks about single parents and working with these young men, there was no one there for him. You know, he was passed along from foster home to foster home, and like so many others. But when we talk about the change having to come from the top down, is when I see how this whole thing was handled after this young man was murdered. Because there are people who are responsible up here that could have made a difference in this whole matter. You know? Yes. How in the world do you allow a police officer who literally murdered this kid to continue work? Nothing said, nothing to see here, you know, nothing's going on. And turn around, and then the mayor is up for re-election. Let's start this top-down cover-up. City council, everybody, let's rush and pay these people, the family, and ask them, when I give you this money, you know, you just be quiet about the video. It's this kid, I felt like, was the pawn, was being used in every aspect of this whole incident. You know, where, you know, nobody cared about him. It was all about what's in it for me. A child going through an abusive life with no love, nothing. Easily enabled that these people would just, this police officer would kill him like that. The family would sweep it under the rug. The top-down administration and everybody else, you know, ignoring it totally because they have their own agenda. It's unbelievable.
One of the things that we are seeing if we talk specifically about Chicago, and let's stay away from globalism, let's talk specifically about Chicago, maybe a few more communities. But one of the things that we're seeing is there's always been a machine level of politics. Chicago is a machine city. I think Atlanta is a machine city, whereas the elitist policies don't reflect the people who are in the struggle every day. They don't respect the common person. So we're seeing, again, with the level of information, I can reach out to you and I can communicate with my neighbor and several other neighbors at the same time about the issues. So the communication is there because because of the ethic of communication and the technology. Now we're able to really address these issues. So not only do we have the communication, not to say we're using it, but we have it as a resource. But now who's picking up on that media is picking up on that. So because the platform is there with the communication, anytime there's an issue, the issue automatically goes what we say viral. And the viral is bringing about change. Dr. King and the civil rights leaders utilized TV as a resource to bring about change. Change wasn't met until people from around the world started seeing the water hoses and the people being beaten up and bitten by dogs. When that went on the TV around the world, then the elitists, our government, knew that we had to have change. And if we didn't have change, it wasn't because of it's just the right thing to do humanistically, but because of the level and the amount of kickback that they would get, pushback that they would get from the community. And that's what this thing has become. It's become a political agenda, but at the same time, you can't stop the movement of the people. One of the things that the elitists have never been able to do is to stop the movement of the people. They see it around the world as we speak. The Arab Spring, which is a group of Arab young folks who got together and they got tired of being oppressed. And they got rid of some leaders. And how did they do it? They did it through Facebook. They did it through Twitter.
Through social media.
These are the movements. They did it through forums such as this. This is where it starts.
And it's just like how successful you were and the communities in Chicago were on Black Friday. Well, you guys shut that street down. I mean, this was just a week ago.
Yeah, with the amount of frustration, we had a coalition of over in the streets. We estimated over 80,000 people who went into the folks who don't know Chicago. It's the luxury district, which is Michigan Avenue, which is your high expensive big ticket stores, diamond stores, and your high end retailers. We had people standing in front of those doors, and people couldn't shop on Black Friday. So it wasn't just a typical boycott. We actually physically stopped people from going into those stores.
Shut it down.
Right. Now, you have a major police force that was deployed out there, but because you had thousands of people doing it, their motion, there's nothing that they could have really done. The next level of approach that they would have probably had to get the National Guard out. And fortunately, because if that were to happen, then the whole situation would have changed into something
Absolutely.
else. Now we have the Watts riots. Now we have Ferguson a year ago, but on steroids. 2 times double. We're talking about Chicago. So the mayor and the folks felt like, let's allow them to do what they're doing. It'll be one day and it'll be over with. But unbeknownst to them is that approach is still leading to change. The police chief stepped down, and he was very much protected. 5 minutes before the mayor gave him a call and said, we are removing you from the position. He was on ABC 7 in Chicago saying, the mayor has my back. I am not resigning. I am going to be here and we're going to change. Look, again, the movement of the community has to stand forefront. And around the country, Ferguson, New York, down in Florida, here in Atlanta, if we can learn a lot of valuable lessons from what's happening in Chicago. I think it's something that's very remarkable.
It's remarkable in the sense that when you talk about corruption, and so much corruption and not just recently. I mean, you've had a police chief that was there before that was worse. I think his name is Barge.
John. Yes. John was actually, he wasn't a chief, and John Burgess. He was a commander, and he was found guilty of torture, is what he was. He was a precinct commander, and he had tortured. We lost count, but as we know, there are at least 40 cases that the city of Chicago is paying out in civil liability. They paid out over $50 million in suits back from the 80s and the 90s when Commander Burge was actually his heyday. Well, what he was doing was he was taking young African-American men and putting false confessions on them. He was using torture tactics. He would use electric prongs on their privates to get them to confess the crimes, and a lot of times they didn't commit. We are working to find if anybody was lost their life as a result of this action. We couldn't prove it. To date, Commander Burge went to jail for a separate, isolated incident, which was a tax-related incident, so he hasn't really been charged. He was released about 4 months ago. He spent 3 years in jail, and now he's back down in Florida, and basically he's been given a vacation. He still has his pension. Wow. So we are still working because, as we know, the statute of limitations on murder is lifelong. So if we can prove that, and as we speak, there's just a change that's coming about because of these things, and people communicating, they're coming together again. I am encouraged, not discouraged, but I'm encouraged, and we will see change, and then that change is going to even affect federally. Our president, and I'm apolitical in a lot of ways when it comes. I believe that criminal justice reform has to start from the federal government. So we are hoping that this particular cabinet, and then going into the next cabinet, we hope that will be on the forefront of the agenda. But if it's not, we're going to make sure that it's there.
And that's so key, because I think that particularly Chicago, the communities in Chicago and the people that live there, they've had enough.
People are frustrated.
They're frustrated, and they've had enough. It's that simple. I mean, anytime you can take that many people and go up on Michigan Avenue and shut it down, that sends a message that they've had enough. And also the fact that it went well, but that the mayor, at this point knew it was in his best interest to let that happen.
It was in his best interest because, again, if he would have done it, asserting, basically that thing would have been turned into a whole different animal.
Absolutely.
And, they couldn't risk that, so they decided to just let things be status quo and deal with the aftermath, and that's what he's doing, dealing with the aftermath. But here's our thing: it's a little bit too little, too late. The proactivity should have been there. So now we're reacting, and the reaction is just not enough. We want to see sweeping change, and we won't stop until we get it.
Now, have you had opportunity? I know that I saw some things that you had forwarded to me with regards to meeting with these people, some of the people in city council or even the mayor himself.
Yes, I stood with the aldermen who were asking now, not since the police chief. We were asking for the police chief to step down, but since he's been removed from office, now we're asking for the county attorney, Anita Alvarez, to remove herself. Well, she has 4 months left in office, and she is what we call a sitting duck, because she hadn't been picked up by the Democratic Party. She's a Democratic Party politician, but they actually didn't endorse her. They want her gone. The aldermen want her gone, and actually we're looking at the mayor's office now, and we're asking him to step down. Not only are we asking him to step down, but 2 days ago, the New York Times, which is the largest newspaper in the country, actually asked for the mayor to step down. We've seen the Chicago Tribune ask for the mayor to step down. So I believe that what will eventually happen, and mark my words, let's keep this recorded, because given another 2 months, because of the pressure, I believe the mayor will eventually step down. If not, the next 2 years, 4 years for him will be he won't get anything done.
Well, not only that, but I doubt if he will. But there is a recall process, isn't it?
I don't believe in this case, but what could happen, and what we were doing with, when I say we, the coalition, the civic activists, and the community leaders, being the politicians, political leaders, what we are actually doing is a vote of no confidence. And that vote of no confidence, again, makes that person ineffective at everything that they're doing. So basically, once that goes on record officially, then, basically you're just someone who's an unwelcome. You're holding a position and you're very unwelcome. understand.
Wow. You tell us about Freedom First International.
Well, Freedom First was started as a division of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and it came from out of the need to. I originally was scheduled to nationally build college chapters for the SCLC, and just in truth, we had a problem branding the SCLC because not even just the SCLC. This is not to diminish anyone's role, but you know, people are not seeing the effectiveness of our national civil rights organizations in this day and age, in this time. You even have young folks who ask, well, who is the SCLC? I'll even take it a step further. They'll ask, who's Dr. King? And you know, we just can't have that. So I decided, and I made it a conscious decision to go out and rebrand the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, but I wasn't given a charter to do the SCLC National because the only authorization for a national structure is the national office here in Atlanta. So I decided to start Freedom First as an affiliate, and that would give me the anonymity to build. And we've won some very historical cases under the Freedom First banner. I uphold the name of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference every opportunity, and I support it to this day. I'm meeting down with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference president right when I leave this particular meeting. And one of the biggest accolades is we actually overturned the youngest person executed in U.S. history, which is the Stinney case.
Yes.
Yes, and that was done using the international media. We had Russia, Germany, France. The Stinney case was written about in the world, and it caused Governor Nikki Haley to buckle under pressure. So this model of using media and social media as a means of a communication pipeline to mobilize the people, there's a lot to that. And we got to be able to look at that for what it's worth and then recreate it again and again and again.
Well, you know, when you see, even with these terror groups, the ISIS, I mean, they've got a serious social media campaign going on. They got you can call in 24-hour call in line. I'm like, what?
And they're doing it in reverse. They're using pressure to terrorize people. That's why ISIS will say, "We're gonna get you, America. We got somebody in America." That's propaganda. And the way that I learned it was I studied the Nazis in Germany. What did they use? They used propaganda. The big grand marches, the preciseness, the big luminous visions of the mobilizations and the big swastika flags. So I studied that, and we studied it, and because we studied it, we were able to look at that as a movement and take the best of that and utilize that for the condition of our people. So guess what? It's working.
Yeah, but it's not only, even with the terrorist groups, you know, when I look at the presidential campaign, particularly on the Republican side right now, all I hear is propaganda. I mean, you talk about big time propaganda. You're talking about to the point where it's like red meat to a lot of people that want to hear that want to participate in that. Finally, oh my God, they say, maybe we've got somebody finally that's listening and that's feeling what we're feeling, you know, and it's just overwhelming because there's so much distortion.
Yes, it is. So we can get past that because the way that we get past that in just as short as we do what we call CBTs. These are community-based transaction stores. We come together with the block clubs. We come together even in the homes, and we talk about the issues, and then we get past the point of dialogue because not only do you talk about them, but then you begin to develop a comprehensive plan to fight against it, to structure against it, and to eliminate that issue. So that's our model, and we can utilize that model for the next 50 to 100 years to implement change in our communities.
Well, you know, it's going to take a lot of work to get that done. It's going to take a lot of work and commitment.
Well, it's being done.
And I'm just saying.
It's being done through attrition. It's happening naturally. You know.
And it's going to take even more because it's not just even Chicago. And as you said, when you've got a social media base where people can go online and communicate with each other, we all have to, in some kind of way, make up our minds which way we're going.
That's right.
Before we can say we're going to come onto this fold of this new wave of social media, we all have to be sure of our direction and what we're feeling and thinking. And we all need to be educated.
That's right.
You know, in that respect, before we can begin to talk about the change.
Lack of knowledge, people what? Perish. So we got to be able to bring as many people to possible, get that information going, help them understand what they're up against. Majority of the people don't understand government. Over 5 years ago, less than 10, they took civics out of academia.
Yes.
Civics was a course.
Yes.
You don't have that anymore, and
Yes.
I wonder why. And I'm suspect, that's very suspect. You see the Koch brothers in community universities and universities around the country paying big time to rally the students. This is what's going on now because they're playing for what's going to happen ahead. So we got to do the same thing. We have to get into our universities. We got to educate our youth, educate our children. We got to go ahead and educate the folks who don't utilize social media. And let's get them going. Let's utilize it. And let's look at historical movements and be able to learn from that type of knowledge. And as a people, African American people come from the motherland. So if you wanted to communicate a message, what did you do? You know, those talking drums to let everybody know when it's time to move. We have to be able to look at those types of things and learn from them. One more thing that I want to say, in Africa, we kept the seniors at the head of the tribe, and we were able to learn from the knowledge of the seniors and draw from the knowledge of the seniors. We don't have that type of ethic here today in America. When our folks get older, we want to intern them, we want to put them in a nursing home. You know, we got to be able to
just throw away all that wisdom.
We got to be able to keep that wisdom.
Yes.
The minister told me, you haven't really learned to live until you get to be 60 years old or older.
Absolutely.
And I believe that.
I'm a witness.
That's right.
I'm a witness, you know. But what I think, and I agree with you about the civics because it's so, you know, it's so needed in the schools right now. I mean, and not only that, but when we look at this situation where there's nothing we can do, like you said about the mayor not being able to recall him, but we just have to look at him and say, you just don't count. You know, when you talk about civics, all of those people who are out there saying, I want it, we want him out, but we don't know how many of them really understand the process.
Right.
You know, and they should understand the process so that this kind of thing can be avoided at some other point, you know? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And they're seeing it, and you know, as days go on, more people are catching on and saying, hey, this is how it should be done. This is the model of what we should be doing. We haven't seen that, but now we're seeing it. When you were working against the toughest machine in the country, Dr. King went down to Chicago and said, this is the most segregated community in America. He couldn't wait to get out of Chicago.
Wow.
You know, and even working in Chicago was always a battle. He said, this is worse than Mississippi and Alabama. So, you know, when you have that type of deep-rooted elitism that's going on, and it takes a group of a community of people who can change that, that is a wealth of knowledge that we can't let go. We got to keep doing. We got to teach our. We got to share that around the country.
I think so. I think so. Absolutely. Now, you also worked with Tamir Rice's mother.
Yes. I'm the lead advocate for the Tamir Rice case, and being the lead advocate.
In case someone doesn't know who Tamir.
Tamir Rice is the 12-year-old who is another civil rights case. He's the 12-year-old who was shot in Cleveland, Ohio, by 2 police officers, and it's a police brutality. Not even a police brutality case, but it is a murder case, which basically is going on right now. It's in the grand jury process.
12-year-old kid.
Tamir was playing on a park with a toy gun. Someone did what we call swatting. Swatting is when they call the police on you and say, hey, this person is doing something, and they come with the SWAT team and the guns blazing. Nobody really did anything, so they call it swatting. So someone, in this case, it wasn't swatting directly, but it was indirectly. Someone said, well, there's a man in the park, and he has a gun and that sort of thing. Well, you know, this is a 12-year-old boy, and he had a toy gun, and that's very much quintessential America. Kids play with toy guns in parks as long as I know, even when I was growing up. But you know, because of the lack of the lack of sensitivity that we're seeing now, so you had two officers who were problematic officers who shouldn't have been on the police force to begin with. One had just real quick. One had just been. Bill just received a payout because he beat down a black lady while she was in cuffs, and on his watch, city paid out $100,000 on that. He was the training officer. Take it for Officer Loman. This is Frank Grandback, training officer, $100,000 payout. Frank Grandback was a rookie police officer on the Cleveland Police Office, who had just come from another Independence, Ohio, which is right down the street, and he basically was on a gun training on the gun range doing a training exercise, and he had a psychological episode. He started shaking and sweating and crying. He had a breakdown. They actually told him, if you don't walk out of here, we're going to fire you. So he decided to take the walk out. So basically that was in his file. So he comes and gets a job. They backdoor him into Cleveland, Ohio. He should have never been on the force.
Wow.
So within 6 months later, both these officers are now in a park, and they're shooting a 12-year-old young man with multiple shots. Tamir was left to be on the ground, bled to death, 5 minutes. And basically the establishment there, which is the police chief, the mayor, and the prosecutor, McGinty, are saying that the shooting was justified. And we are fighting against that, and as the seasons change, and we're seeing that change, we hopefully the effect can go down into Cleveland.
Yeah, I hope so. I know that the last thing I saw was